At 85, I figured the years ahead would be filled with comfort and warmth, not cold refusals. When I asked if I could spend Christmas with them, my daughter's cheerful voice on the phone suddenly sharpened into 7 words that cut me deeper than any winter wind. "It's a family-only thing this year, Dad." I'd given them everything over the years. Paid off their mortgage. Helped raise their little girl. After my wife passed, I hadn't demanded much, just a chair at the holiday table now and then. But instead of welcome, what I got that evening sparked the slowest, quietest plan for revenge I'd ever brewed in my long life. My name's Justin Miller. I've lived more than 8 decades, and I know what it feels like when someone shuts a door in your face. That call came on a Tuesday evening in early December, right when Ohio's winter had settled in like a heavy gray blanket over the city. I was in my 1-bedroom apartment, sunk into the old leather recliner I'd rescued from the house I sold 5 years back, when the phone rang. "Hi, Dad," Janet chirped, her voice bright and rushed as always. In the background, I caught the clatter of dishes and the faint hum of the dishwasher, the everyday sounds of the home I'd once helped her buy. "Hello, sweetheart," I answered, though even as I spoke, a dull ache stirred in my chest. It had been 3 weeks since we last spoke, and every call seemed to carry that same ache these days. "How's everyone doing?" "Oh, busy as ever. Brian's knee-deep in some big project, and Sarah's got finals around the corner." She said it casually, as if rattling off a grocery list, but the distant tones still landed like a small sting. "So, what's up?" I cleared my throat and tightened my grip on the phone, more than I needed to. "Well, I was thinking about Christmas this year. I'd really like to come stay with you all. It's been 5 years since your mom passed, and I thought maybe—" "Oh, Dad." She cut me off right there, her voice softening into that carefully polite tone I'd heard her use with clients when she had to deliver bad news. "About that, we're actually doing something different this year." "Different?" I asked, though my gut already knew where this was heading. "It's a family-only thing this year, Dad." Those words hung heavy in the air, stretched across the miles between her house in Salt Lake City and my little corner of Columbus. Family only. Like I wasn't part of that definition anymore. Like I was some old neighbor fishing for an invite I had no right to. "I see," I managed to say, though in truth I didn't see it all. "You understand, right? Brian's parents are coming, plus his sister and her kids. The place is going to be jam-packed. Maybe next year." Next year. Always next year. Just like it had been maybe next time when I offered to help with Sarah's school projects, or we'll see, when I suggested taking her to the Science Museum on my last trip out. Of course, I heard myself say automatically, like a reflex I'd honed over decades of avoiding conflict. "I understand." "Great. I knew you would." "Oh, I've got to run. Showing a house in 20 minutes. We'll talk soon, okay? Love you." And just like that, the line went dead before I could answer. I sat there for a long moment, phone still pressed against my ear, listening to the silence that filled my apartment. Through the window, I saw the house across the street already glowing with Christmas lights. A family of 4 lived there: Mom, Dad, 2 teenagers. I'd watched those kids grow up these past 5 years, tossing footballs in the yard, celebrating birthdays, packing up the car for vacations. I set my phone down carefully on the side table, right beside the framed photo of Carol and me on our 40th anniversary. She would have known what to say, how to bridge this widening gap between Janet and me. But Carol was gone, and all that was left was an old man in a recliner, no longer considered family enough to share in family gatherings. The irony wasn't lost on me. That house in Salt Lake City, the one now too full for me to squeeze into at Christmas, I'd paid off that mortgage when Janet and Brian were drowning in debt 8 years back. The dining room they'd crowd into for Christmas dinner? I'd spent 3 months with Brian fixing it up, hammer in hand, and bad back aching. The guest room that supposedly had no room for me anymore? I painted those walls myself. But none of that counted now. I was 85 years old, widowed, and I'd just been politely uninvited from Christmas by my only child. Suddenly the apartment felt colder, even with the furnace humming steadily. I pulled Carol's old knitted Afghan tight around my shoulders and stared down at the phone, wondering when exactly I'd gone from being a father to being just another obligation. The signs had been there, of course. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Like tiny cracks in a foundation, you don't notice them until the whole house begins to shift. After Carol died, grief blinded me to a lot. But now, With December's darkness pressing in against my windows, I let myself look back. It had all started with the house. Our house, mine and Carol's. A 4-bedroom colonial where we'd raised Janet. 6 months after the funeral, Janet flew in from Salt Lake City, full of concern and practicality. "Dad, this place is way too big for you," she'd said, walking through rooms that still smelled faintly of Carol's lavender sachets. "And the upkeep, it's just too much. Why not sell it? You could get a nice apartment, something easier to manage." She didn't say it out loud, but I heard it anyway, something that would free up the money. And I agreed. The house felt empty without Carol, and every step up the staircase reminded me of those final months, helping her climb one slow step at a time. The sale went fast. Janet handled the whole process with her real estate connections, and the profit was substantial. Over dinner that night, still dizzy from signing away the place we'd built our life in, I told her, "I want to invest in your future. Take half of it for a down payment on a bigger house for Sarah." She cried then, hugged me tight. "Oh, Dad, are you sure?" I was sure. What else did I need the money for? Then came Brian's MBA. 2 years of night classes while holding down a job had worn him out. One day during a visit, he let it slip. If only I could focus on the degree. He didn't meet my eyes when he said it. So, I wrote another check, $60,000 for tuition and living costs, so he could quit working and focus on school. I called it an investment in your future. The gratitude back then was overwhelming. Weekly phone calls, graduation pictures, promises that this would change everything. And it did. Brian landed a corporate job. They bought that new house, the one I'd helped them secure. Then came the furniture, the landscaping, a replacement car when theirs broke down. And every time, I opened my wallet. After all, what else was a father supposed to do? And in the years that followed, it wasn't just the money. I became part of the daily routine. For 3 years straight, I drove Sarah to school every morning at 7 sharp, because Janet had early showings and Brian left for work at 6. By the time all this was happening, I'd already moved to Columbus. I'd taken that little apartment just so I could be closer to them. 5 days a week, I'd make the 20-minute drive, pull into their driveway around 5:45, and head inside to start breakfast for Sarah while she got herself ready for school. "You're a lifesaver, Dad," Janet would toss over her shoulder, hurrying past me with her coffee in hand. "I don't know what we'd do without you." But things changed. Brian's job got more secure. Janet's real estate career really started to take off. And just like that, my morning routine, the one I'd built my days around, wasn't needed anymore. The calls slowed down. Sunday dinners slipped from every week to once a month, then every other month, then only on holidays. "We're just so busy," Janet would say, as if that explained everything. "You understand, don't you?" And I did understand, at least the part she wasn't saying out loud. I'd gone from being a father, to a banker, to a babysitter, and finally to a burden. Then, last week, the Christmas card arrived, the final hint I'd been too blind to read. It came from Betty Wong, our old neighbor back at the Colonial. "Dear Justin," she wrote in that spidery handwriting of hers. "George and I were thrilled to hear about Janet's lake house. She mentioned at the closing that it was a gift from her father. How generous of you. You must be so proud. Hope you're enjoying your retirement. A lake house." I set the card down, my hands trembling. I had never bought Janet a lake house. I hadn't even talked about buying her property. But there it was, written plain as day in Betty's careful script, a gift from her father. I opened my laptop, fingers clumsy on the keys, and started digging through Salt Lake City property records. It took some time, but eventually I found it. A cabin on Bear Lake, purchased 3 months ago. The listed owner? Matson Family Trust. I didn't have a family trust. The trembling stopped. Something colder settled in its place. I thought back and remembered a text Janet had sent me a couple months earlier, one I barely glanced at the time. "Dad, need you to sign some routine financial planning documents." Sending them over. And of course, I'd sign them. Why wouldn't I? She was my daughter. I trusted her. But now, sitting there uninvited from Christmas in the house I'd helped them buy, it finally clicked. I wasn't family anymore. I was just a resource to be managed, a well to be drained, an old man to be kept at a polite distance until they needed another withdrawal. The thing is, I'd been a financial director for 40 years. If there's one lesson that job taught me, it's this. The best time to audit the books is when people think you're not looking. I shut the laptop and reached for my phone, not to call Janet, because that bridge was already burning. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts until I landed on a number I hadn't dialed in years, Davis and Associates, the law firm I'd kept on retainer since my corporate days. It was time to review some paperwork of my own. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday night at 10:15, my phone buzzed with a text. The sender ID said simply E, but I knew exactly who it was. Sarah had put her number in my phone that way herself, said it looked more mysterious. "Grandpa, can I call you? Please don't tell Mom." I was already fumbling for my glasses, squinting at the screen to make sure I read it right. In 2 years, Sarah had never reached out directly. Janet always acted as the gatekeeper, scheduling our talks like she was managing a business appointment. "Of course, sweetheart." I typed back slowly, my stiff fingers aching with arthritis. "Call anytime." The phone rang almost instantly. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice soft and nervous. I could picture her in her bedroom, maybe with a towel shoved under the door to muffle the sound. "I'm sorry to bother you so late." "You're never a bother," I said, and I meant it. "What's going on?" There was a pause, the kind teenagers take when they're trying to decide just how much truth they can share with an adult. "I heard Mom and Dad talking about you tonight," she said at last. About your stuff." "My stuff?" I asked, tightening my grip on the phone. "Yeah. Mom was on the phone with somebody about clearing out Dad's assets. Well, she called them your assets too. She said something about how you don't need much at your age. She mentioned a lake house and some other property. Dad told her to keep her voice down." My jaw clenched. "What else did you hear?" "She said something about power of attorney and that you'd already signed some papers." Then her voice softened with fear. "Grandpa, are you sick? Is that why they won't let you come for Christmas?" The concern in her voice nearly undid me. 15 years old, and she was the only one worrying about my health instead of my bank account. "I'm not sick, honey. Just old, apparently." "That's what I thought," she muttered, and I could hear the frown in her tone. "Because you seemed fine when I saw you at Thanksgiving last year. But Mom's been acting weird. She keeps meeting with some lawyer, and there are all these papers in Dad's office about trusts and estates." "Sarah," I said carefully, "I need you to understand something. What you're telling me is very important, but I don't want you to feel like you're betraying your parents." "I'm not betraying anyone," she snapped. "They're the ones being weird and secretive and mean. They didn't even let me call you on your birthday last month. Mom said you were probably busy." "My birthday? I'd spent it alone, watching Jeopardy, and eating Chinese takeout. Janet had mailed me a card, one of those generic grocery store ones with nothing but her signature at the bottom." "Grandpa, there's something else," Sarah went on. "Remember that cabin you bought them? The one on Bear Lake?" I shot through me. I remember hearing about it. "Well, Mom's been talking about selling it. She says the market's hot, and they could make a killing. But here's the weird part. She keeps saying they need to do it before you complicate things." Before I complicate things. As if all I'd done, asking to spend Christmas with my family, was a complication. "Did she mention anything else about my assets?" I asked, choosing my words slowly. "Yeah. She said something about a place in Florida. She found some old deed in her files and got really excited about it. The Florida property. A little condo in Clearwater that Carol and I had picked up in the 80s as an investment. We'd used it maybe twice. After Carol died, I'd meant to sell it but never followed through. Honestly, I'd almost forgotten it existed." "Sarah," I said, my voice steady now, "I need to ask you something. And I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. Do you trust me more than anyone else?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "You're the only one who actually listens to me. Mom and Dad are always too busy or distracted. You're the one who taught me chess, who came to my science fairs, who actually cares about my photography." I told her softly. "Then you need to understand something, Sarah. Whatever happens over the next few weeks, I'll be doing it because I love you." I hesitated, then added, "Things might get messy with your mom and dad." But she cut in before I could finish. "Grandpa, are you okay? They're not trying to stick you in a nursing home or something, are they?" The panic in her voice told me she'd overheard more than she wanted to admit. "I'm fine," I said, trying to steady her. "But, Sarah, I may have to make a few changes to keep myself safe and to make sure you're protected. Can you promise me to keep this between us for now?" "Yes," she said, then paused. "But protect yourself from what?" "From my own daughter," I thought bitterly, though I didn't let the words leave my mouth. "Just some financial things, I told her instead, brushing it off. Grown-up paperwork. Nothing exciting. She was quiet for a moment before whispering, Grandpa, I know Mom hasn't been very kind to you lately. I'm sorry about what happened at Christmas. If it were up to me. I know, sweetheart, I cut in gently. I love you, Grandpa, she said, her voice small but fierce. Whatever Mom's planning, whatever's going on, please don't let them make you disappear. You're the only real family I've got. Her words hung heavy after we hung up. I sat there in the dark for a long time, letting it all sink in. The lake house wasn't just a rumor, it existed. The Florida property was already being moved around. And Janet, my own daughter, was actively stripping me of what I'd worked my whole life to build. But something else became clear in that moment. I wasn't alone in this. Sarah had just given me the one thing worth protecting, the one person I absolutely couldn't afford to lose. That realization lit a fire under me. I opened my laptop and started making a list. Every bank account, every property, every investment. Things Janet might think she had access to, and the ones she had no clue existed. By the time I finally shut the computer, it was past midnight. Strangely enough, I wasn't tired. For the first time since that awful family phone call, I felt more than just hurt. I felt ready. Walking into the offices of Davis & Associates on Monday morning felt like stepping back 20 years. The mahogany paneling still gleamed, the same old leather chairs groaned when you sat down, and the faint mix of dusty books and expensive coffee lingered in the air. Robert Davis himself was grayer than the last time I'd seen him, but his handshake still carried that firm, steady weight when he greeted me at 9 sharp. Justin, he said, motioning me into his private office. When you called, you sounded concerned. That's one way to put it, I muttered, settling into the chair across from his desk. I slid a folder of documents onto the table between us. I need you to take a hard look at some papers I signed recently. And I need to make changes to my estate planning. His eyebrows ticked up slightly, but he didn't comment, just opened the folder. I watched as his expression shifted from polite interest to something closer to alarm. Justin, he said slowly, setting one page down like it might burn him. Do you realize what you signed? I thought it was routine financial planning paperwork, I admitted. That's what my daughter told me. These are anything but routine, he said flatly. He lifted one sheet. This right here is a comprehensive power of attorney. It hands Janet full control over your finances, immediately. She can sell your property, drain your accounts, move investments, without so much as asking you. The air in the room turned cold. And it doesn't stop there, Robert continued, tapping another page. This one creates a family trust with her as the only trustee. This one transfers your Florida condo into that trust. And this, he stopped, shaking his head. Christ, Justin, this one gives her medical power of attorney. It allows her to make healthcare decisions for you, even to commit you to a care facility against your will. I sat back, feeling the crushing weight of betrayal pressed down on me. Can we undo it? I asked. Yes, he said, leaning forward. But we have to move quickly. The longer these documents stand, the more she can do with them. Has Janet already acted on any of these powers? She bought a lake house, I admitted. Put it in a Miller family trust, funded with my money, though I didn't know it at the time. Robert's face darkened. We'll freeze everything immediately. I'll file to revoke the power of attorney and contest the trust. But Justin, I need to ask, does Janet have any reason to genuinely think you're losing capacity? Any health issues? My last checkup was 6 months ago, I said firmly. Blood pressure under control, cholesterol fine, mind sharp. Dr. Williams said I was in excellent health. I still knock out the crossword every morning in pen. Good. Get a letter from Dr. Williams confirming you're mentally competent. We'll need that, Robert said, scribbling notes on a legal pad. Now, let's focus on securing what's left. What assets does Janet not know about? For the first time in weeks, I smiled. My retirement accounts from Stronghold Industries. They're tied to the company pension trust, not directly to me. She'd need board approval to touch those. And I still play golf with half the board. I paused. And there's a safety deposit box she doesn't know about. Carol's jewelry and some bearer bonds. Perfect, Robert said with a nod. We'll set up a new trust, one she can't touch. And I suggest something different this time. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Make Sarah your primary beneficiary, but attach very specific conditions. What kind of conditions? I asked. The kind that safeguard both of you. Janet and Brian inherit nothing if they try to question your competency, shove you into a home, or keep up their current behavior. But if they treat you with respect, keep in contact, include you in family events, then they get a modest inheritance. Carrot and stick. Carrot and stick, I repeated, nodding slowly. Exactly. But the bulk goes to Sarah, in a trust Janet can't reach. The money can help with school, housing, maybe starting a business, but always shielded from her parents' interference. Can we add one more thing? I asked, remembering Sarah's trembling voice on the phone. She was scared I'd disappear. I want a requirement in there, regular visits or calls with me, no matter what her parents think. Robert made another note. We'll add that. If they try to block your relationship with your granddaughter, they forfeit everything. And the lake house? I asked finally. Can we get it back? If she used your money without your approval, absolutely. We'll demand either the property itself or full restitution. And since Janet's a real estate agent, she knew exactly what she was doing. No judge will look kindly on that. I found myself remembering Janet as a little girl, the way she used to climb into my lap after scraping her knees or waking from bad dreams. Somewhere along the line, that trusting child had grown into a woman who could rob her own father. There's one more thing, I told Robert. From now on, I want to record every call and every meeting. Ohio law allows single-party consent, right? That's smart, he said, setting his pen down and meeting my eyes. But Justin, I need to be honest with you. This is going to get ugly. Janet won't go quietly when she realizes what you're doing. Are you ready for that? She already made her choice, I said softly. She decided I wasn't family anymore. I'm just defending myself from someone hostile, someone who just happens to share my bloodline. Robert gave a slow nod. Then let's get moving. I'll have the revocation papers drafted by this afternoon. We'll file them immediately and send Janet formal notice that her power of attorney is terminated. We'll also demand a full accounting of everything she's done under those documents. And Christmas? I asked. She made it clear I wasn't welcome. Robert's smile was sharp and humorless. Oh, I think you absolutely should attend Christmas dinner. In fact, I insist. Nothing says holiday spirit quite like serving legal papers over dessert. An hour later, as I walked out of his office with our plan in motion, I felt something I hadn't felt since Carol passed away: control. Janet had thought she'd outsmarted an old, feeble man. But she was about to learn that 40 years in corporate finance had taught me more about strategy than she'd ever pick up selling houses. The game had shifted. This time, I was the one setting the rules. Christmas Eve arrived with a fresh layer of snow, turning Salt Lake City into something out of a holiday postcard. At exactly 5:30 p.m., I stood outside Janet's house, briefcase in one hand, a bottle of wine in the other. Through the glowing windows, I could hear muffled laughter, see the warm lights spilling over Christmas decorations. Family only, she had said. On either side of me stood my allies, Robert Davis, dressed in his sharpest suit, and Susan Jones, a notary who specialized in fraud cases. We must have looked like an odd little trio, three professionals about to crash a holiday dinner. I pressed the doorbell. Brian answered, his face tightening with confusion. Justin, we weren't. His eyes flicked to Robert and Susan, and his confusion turned instantly to alarm. What's going on? Merry Christmas, Brian, I said pleasantly. I brought wine and a couple of friends. May we come in? Janet, he called over his shoulder, stepping back from the door. We didn't wait for an invitation, we simply walked inside. The house smelled of roasted turkey and pine, and in the living room Brian's parents were seated on the couch, while his sister's children played with new toys on the rug. Janet came out of the kitchen with a dish towel still in her hands, her apron dotted with flowers. Her face flickered through surprise, anger, and then the brittle mask of composure. Dad, what are you doing here? I told you this was family only. Oh, I remember, I said evenly. But I've got some family business to discuss. And what better time than Christmas? At that moment, Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and I gave her a quick wink. Perhaps we should step aside and speak privately, Janet suggested, pasting on her realtor's smile, though it didn't touch her eyes. No need for privacy, I said, setting the wine bottle on the entry table and opening my briefcase. We're all family here, aren't we? Robert, if you would. Robert stepped forward. Mrs. Abrams, I'm Thomas Davis, representing your father. I'm here to inform you that all powers of attorney previously granted to you have been revoked, effective immediately." The room froze. The only sound was the crinkle of wrapping paper under a child's foot. Janet's face drained of color. "This is ridiculous. Dad, you're not well. Showing up with lawyers on Christmas Eve, it proves my point." "I also brought a letter from Dr. Williams," I said, pulling out the document. "Dated last week. It confirms my excellent mental and physical health. Would you like me to read it aloud for everyone here?" Brian's mother cleared her throat nervously. "Maybe we should give you some privacy." "No, please stay," I said warmly. "You deserve to know who you're having Christmas dinner with." "Janet, do you want to explain about the lake house you bought with my money, or should I?" "Dad, stop," Janet hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Am I?" I asked, raising my voice for the room. 3 months ago, my daughter used a fraudulent power of attorney to purchase a vacation property, without my knowledge or consent. She even told the neighbors it was a gift from me. Susan stepped forward, holding up her notary seal. "I have authenticated the documents. The property transfer was illegal." Brian sank into a chair, his face ashen. His parents exchanged horrified glances. Sarah had come halfway down the stairs, staring wide-eyed. "And that's not all," I continued, my voice steady though my heart was pounding. "Janet also tried to transfer my Florida property into a trust she controls. She drafted papers that would allow her to commit me to a care facility against my will, all while insisting they were routine financial planning documents." "You didn't even read them," Janet snapped. "You just signed like you always do." "Because I trusted my daughter," I said quietly. "That was my mistake." Robert pulled out more papers. "We're demanding full restitution for the lake house, plus damages for breach of fiduciary duty. We're also requiring a complete accounting of all financial transactions made under the fraudulent documents." "This is insane," Janet said, though her voice was shaking. "I was trying to help you. You're 85 years old. You live alone." "Alone because you told me I wasn't welcome here," I shot back. "Not family enough for Christmas dinner, but family enough to steal from." "I didn't steal," she insisted. "What do you call taking $600,000 without permission?" I asked. The number hit the room like a thunderclap. Brian's sister quickly gathered her children and hurried them into another room. Brian's father rose, his expression hard. "Janet, is this true?" "You don't understand," Janet snapped, turning on him. "He was going to waste it anyway. Just sitting on properties that could be invested, hoarding money that could have secured Sarah's future." "My money," I said, my voice like stone. "My decision how to use it. And just so we're clear, I've already secured Sarah's future." "Robert?" Robert reached into the briefcase and pulled out a crisp document. "Mr. Miller has created a dedicated education and life trust for Sarah Miller Abrams. It will be administered through our office. Her college tuition, housing, and even potential business ventures will be fully funded, under strict conditions that prevent any parental interference." From the staircase came a sharp gasp. Sarah's hand was over her mouth. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I said, smiling at her for the first time that evening. "This is yours, and yours alone. Protected. Safe. Your parents can't touch a dime." "You can't do this," Janet stammered, though the fire in her tone was fading fast. "I can," I said, snapping the briefcase shut. "And I already have. You've got 30 days to return the lake house money, or you'll be facing criminal charges for elder financial abuse. Robert will handle the details." I turned toward the door but paused, letting the silence stretch. "Oh, and one last note. Your power of attorney is revoked. When Sarah turns 18, she'll have limited medical power of attorney. If anyone's going to make decisions about my health, it'll be the one person who still treats me like family." The last thing I saw before leaving was Sarah charging down the stairs, tears running down her cheeks. "Grandpa, wait." I opened my arms and she crashed into me, clutching tight. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart," I whispered into her hair. "Not anymore." Behind her, Janet stood frozen, surrounded by the wreckage of her perfect Christmas dinner, realizing at last that some damage can't be undone. The silence that filled the room after Sarah's embrace was heavy, broken only by her soft sobs against my coat. Brian's parents had retreated to the wall, faces pale. His sister lingered in the kitchen doorway, her children hidden behind her skirt. "Sarah, get away from him," Janet snapped, her voice sharp with panic. He's clearly having a breakdown. No, Sarah said fiercely, pulling back from me but keeping my hand locked in hers. You're the one lying. I heard you, Mom. All those calls about Grandpa's money. Robert cleared his throat. Perhaps we should continue with the documentation. Justin? I gave Sarah's hand a squeeze, then released it. From the briefcase, I pulled a fat manila folder. Since we're laying it all out, let's be thorough. Susan, the notary, set her things on the dining table, the same table where I'd once carved Thanksgiving turkeys and watched Sarah blow out birthday candles. The irony wasn't lost on me. First, I said, sliding out a bank statement, let's talk about the $150,000 transferred from my account to yours over the last 5 years. Funny how every withdrawal came in under $10,000, just shy of the federal reporting threshold. Almost like it was intentional. That was for, Brian began, but I cut him off, laying out receipts like playing cards. Vacations to Cabo, Aspen, and Hawaii. A BMW lease. Private school tuition for Sarah, which, by the way, I was already paying directly to the school. That's double dipping. Jewelry purchases. Do I need to go on? Robert took over then, his voice booming with courtroom precision. We've documented over $400,000 in unauthorized transfers and expenditures, not counting the lake house. Mrs. Abrams used her father's credit cards for personal charges, opened joint accounts without consent, and even attempted to name herself as the beneficiary on his life insurance. Everything we did was for family, Janet shrieked. For our future. Your future, I corrected, pulling out another sheet. Here, text messages. Screenshots Sarah had the courage to send me. Your own words, Janet. Dad's too old to know what's happening. We need to move fast before he catches on. If we can prove cognitive decline, we get everything. Brian's mother gasped. His father shook his head in disgust. Janet spun towards Sarah, her face twisted. You little traitor, don't you dare. I stepped in front of my granddaughter. She's the only honest one here. Robert didn't let up. We also have recordings of phone calls where Mrs. Abrams discussed plans to have Mr. Miller declared incompetent. She even contacted multiple elder care facilities, asking about involuntary commitment procedures. I pulled out my phone, tapped play, and Janet's voice spilled into the room. Hi, Sunshine Manor. I'm calling about your memory care unit. My father is becoming difficult. What's your process for admission when the patient doesn't consent? Turn it off, Janet whispered, her voice breaking. But I played another. Yes, Dr. Hartley, my father is 85, and I'm worried about his judgment. No actual symptoms, but at his age. Enough. Brian cut in, his voice raw. We get it. Do you? I shot back, my anger rising. Do you really? I paid off this house. I funded your MBA. I drove your daughter to school every day for 3 years. And this is how you repay me? By scheming to lock me away and strip me of everything Carol and I built together? Susan spoke next, her professional tone slicing through the tension. Mr. Miller has provided evidence of a systematic pattern of elder financial abuse. The district attorney's office will take a strong interest in this case. Criminal charges, Brian muttered, pale as a ghost. Janet, you said. Shut up, she snapped at him. I reached for the last paper. This is a cease and desist order. You are forbidden from touching any of my accounts, properties, or assets. One violation, and I'll see you in court for criminal prosecution. And this, Robert added, producing another document, is a restraining order. Mrs. Abrams is barred from approaching within 500 feet of Mr. Miller without his consent and from contacting any medical provider about his care. You're destroying our family, Janet screamed. No, I said quietly, almost tired now. You destroyed it the day you decided I was just a wallet to be drained. The day you told me I wasn't family enough for Christmas, but was family enough to rob. Sarah stepped forward, her chin lifted, her voice steady. I'm going with Grandpa. You're not going anywhere, Janet snapped. Actually, Robert cut in smoothly. Sarah is 15, I said, locking eyes with Janet through the speaker. Here in Florida, her preference carries a lot of weight in custody matters. Given the evidence of financial misconduct, if she chooses to live with me, it's likely the court will honor that choice. I've already filed for temporary guardianship. Under the circumstances, it should be granted. The room erupted. Janet lunged forward, Brian trying to restrain her, his parents shouting, the children in the other room crying. Through all the chaos, Sarah stood beside me, trembling but resolute. "One more thing," I said, raising my voice above the storm. "The trust fund I've set up for Sarah has very specific clauses. Any attempt to manipulate, coerce, or alienate her from me results in immediate disinheritance for both of you. However, if you rebuild a genuine relationship, not for money, but as family, there's a possibility of reconciliation." "Get out," Janet said, her voice breaking. "The house I paid for?" I asked calmly. "Gladly," I added. "Sarah, do you want to pack a bag?" She nodded and ran upstairs. As we waited, I took one last look at my daughter. The little girl who had once danced on my feet was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. "I loved you more than life itself," I whispered. "But you taught me something important. Family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty. And you have none." When Sarah returned with her backpack, we left together, Robert and Susan flanking us like an honor guard. Behind us, Janet's picture-perfect Christmas lay in ruins. Truth scattered across her dining room table like torn wrapping paper. Some presents, once unwrapped, can never be returned. The hotel suite was quiet, except for the soft sound of Sarah crying into her pillow. We had checked into the Grand America in downtown Salt Lake City, a safe, comfortable place while we processed the wreckage of Christmas Eve. Robert and Susan had left after making sure we were settled, promising to file all paperwork first thing in the morning. I sat on the edge of her bed, my hand resting gently on her shoulder. "I'm sorry you had to see all that, sweetheart." She rolled over, face streaked with tears. "Are they going to jail?" "I don't know," I admitted. "That depends on what they do next." My phone buzzed again, 20th time in the past hour. "Janet." I let it go to voicemail. "Grandpa," Sarah said quietly. "What happens now?" "Now we set the rules," I replied, moving to the sitting area and gesturing for her to join me. "Want some hot chocolate? The room service here is excellent." She managed a small smile. "Mom never lets me have hot chocolate after 6. "Well," I said, dialing room service, "your mother isn't here." I ordered 2 hot chocolates with extra marshmallows and some sandwiches. Neither of us had eaten dinner. While we waited, I pulled out the documents Robert had prepared. "I want to explain something, Sarah. What I did tonight isn't about revenge." "It looked like revenge," she said, curling up in the armchair across from me. "Maybe a little," I admitted, "but mostly, it's about protection and consequences." Room service arrived, and we sat quietly for a few moments, sipping our drinks. Outside, snow continued to fall over the city lights. "Your trust fund," I began, "will make sure you never have to depend on anyone the way I depended on your mother. College, grad school, starting a business, buying a home, you'll have it all. But there are conditions." "What kind of conditions?" she asked. "You have to keep your grades up. Work or volunteer 20 hours each summer. You can't access the principal until you're 25, except for education and approved investments. And you have to promise me something." "What?" "Never let money become more important than people. Never let greed poison your relationships the way it poisoned your mother's." She nodded solemnly. "I promise." My phone rang again. This time it was Brian. I thought about ignoring it, but decided to answer. "Yes." "Justin, please," his voice strained. "Janet's having a complete breakdown. She's talking about doing something drastic. Can we talk? Work something out?" "Put her on speaker," I said. "Sarah deserves to hear this too." A pause. Then Janet's voice, raw and desperate. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I panicked after Mom died. You seemed so lost. And I thought you'd help yourself to my money while I was grieving." "No," I said firmly. "I was securing our assets, Sarah's future. My assets, the ones I worked 40 years to accumulate with your mother." I know," she sobbed. "But please don't take Sarah. Don't press charges. We can work this out. We're family." Sarah's hand slipped into mine, squeezing gently. "Here are my terms," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Non-negotiable. First, return every penny you took, including the lake house, within 30 days. Second, sign a legal document acknowledging the theft and agreeing to never touch my finances again. Third, attend weekly family therapy with a counselor I choose for at least 1 year." "Okay. Yes, anything," Janet stammered. "I'm not finished." "Fourth, respect Sarah's choice to live where she feels safe. Fifth, resign from any positions where you handle client finances." Sixth, write a letter to every family member and friend you misled about me, admitting the truth. No more painting me as a senile old man. Silence on the line. Those are the terms. Accept all, follow through, and I may consider not pressing charges. Violate one, or try to manipulate me or Sarah again, and I'll pursue prosecution fully. Do you understand? A pause. Then, meekly, can I at least see Sarah? I looked at my granddaughter. She shook her head slightly. Not yet, I said. Maybe after you actually show some real change in therapy. I said. Sarah will decide when she's ready. This is kidnapping. Janet suddenly screamed. You can't just take her. I stayed calm. I have a notarized statement from Sarah, clearly stating her preference. I also have evidence of financial crimes that would make any judge seriously question your fitness as parents. And I have the resources to make sure everything is done legally. This isn't kidnapping, Janet. This is consequence. Brian's voice came through, tense but quieter. We'll think about your terms. You have 24 hours to decide, I replied firmly. After that, I file criminal charges. Good night. I hung up and shut off my phone. Sarah stared at her hot chocolate, tears slowly dropping into the marshmallows. I wondered quietly, did she ever really love me? Or was I just another asset to manage? I pulled her into a hug. She loves you, I said softly, in her own broken way. But sometimes love gets twisted by greed and fear until it turns into something harmful. What if they don't agree to your terms? She asked. Then we move forward without them, I said. I'll hire the best lawyers, make sure you're protected, and we'll build a new kind of family. Just you and me. She offered a watery smile. And maybe Robert, she added. He's kind of cool for a lawyer. I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. Maybe Robert can join us for Sunday dinners. Outside, snow kept falling as we sat together in the warm suite. Two generations connected not by blood, but by trust. Not by obligation, but by choice. It wasn't the Christmas either of us had planned, but maybe it was exactly the one we needed. The conditions were set. The choice was Janet's now. But no matter what, Sarah and I would be okay. We had each other, and as I'd painfully learned, that was the only family that truly mattered. A week later, I sat at my kitchen table in Columbus, sorting through the mail. The apartment felt different now, warmer somehow, with Sarah's photographs decorating the walls and her laughter filling the spaces that had been silent for far too long. She was at her new school, the one I'd enrolled her in after filing for emergency custody. The judge had reviewed Robert's evidence and granted it immediately. The doorbell rang precisely at 2 p.m. I already knew who it was. The courier handed me a thick manila envelope. Justin Miller, signature required. I signed, brought it inside, and opened it, already expecting what was inside. There were 3 letters, one from Janet, one from Brian, and one typed on official legal letterhead. I opened the legal document first. Both Janet and Brian acknowledged the theft of funds, agreed to full restitution, and accepted all my conditions without change. A cashier's check for the full amount of the lake house sale, plus interest, was attached. Brian's note was short. I'm sorry it got this far. I saw what was happening, but was too weak to stop it. You deserved better from both of us. I've started therapy on my own. Maybe someday I can earn the right to be in Sarah's life again. Janet's letter was longer, full of excuses I expected, but then something unexpected. I became someone I don't recognize. Mom would be ashamed. I'm starting intensive therapy next week. Not for the money, not to get Sarah back, but because I need to understand how I became this person. I'm sorry, Dad, for everything. I set the letters aside and looked out the window. The family across the street played in their yard, parents watching teenagers fling snowballs. Normal, happy, intact. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Made a friend today. Her name's Sarah. Can she come over after school? Of course, I typed back. I'll make cookies. Another buzz. An email from my financial advisor confirming all fraudulent transactions had been reversed, the accounts secured, and the Florida property safely back in my name. The financial bleeding had stopped. But the third notification made me pause. A voicemail from my old neighbor, Betty. Justin, I heard about what happened with Janet. I'm so sorry. George and I are having our New Year's Eve party, same as always. You're invited. Bring that granddaughter of yours. It's time you started living again instead of just existing. I glanced at the letters one more time. 3 people had tried to erase me from my own life, to reduce me to nothing more than a bank account. They failed, but the victory felt hollow. I'd won back my money, protected Sarah's future, safeguarded myself. But at what cost? Maybe I'd lost my daughter years ago, and this was just the final acknowledgement. The front door opened. Sarah bounded in with her new friend. "Grandpa, this is Sarah." "Sarah, this is my grandpa. He's teaching me about investing and makes the best grilled cheese in Ohio." I smiled at the girls, already pulling out cookie ingredients. This was my life now, not the one I'd planned, but maybe the one I needed. A 15-year-old granddaughter who chose me, who saw me as family when my own daughter couldn't. That evening, as Sarah worked on homework at the kitchen table, she looked up. "Grandpa, do you think Mom will ever really change?" I thought about lying, offering false hope, but she deserved the truth. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said honestly.